She was laughing too hard for someone who didn't know I was watching. One hand wrapped around a plastic flute of champagne, the other twirling a toothpick, the sad little cheese cube clinging for dear life. Her smile was the kind that only came out at these events, half practiced, half predatory. I was 4 feet away. She hadn't noticed. Or maybe she had, and that was the point. The man beside her was tall. Wavy brown hair, shirt unbuttoned just far enough to scream HR won't care if I'm charming enough. His name tag said Chase. Of course it did. Her laugh rose again, and I saw her touch his forearm. She touches me like that when she wants me to clean the gutters. No one ever tells you betrayal has a sound. It does. It's her laugh, but not for you. It's the clink of a ringless hand against another man's glass. It's the silence that follows when you realize no one at this party even remembers you were her husband. I didn't make a scene. I didn't charge across the room and demand answers. Instead, I walked over to the snack table like a ghost, grabbed a napkin, and stared at the cheese cubes. That's when hers fell, right off the toothpick. She bent over to grab it. He helped. Their faces were too close. My stomach turned. It wasn't the cheese. I left without saying a word. Didn't even shut the door hard. Didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing I saw. I slid into my car and sat in the dark. Just breathing. Just wondering what part of me had started dying and when. She didn't come home that night. Not by midnight. Not by 3 a.m. Not even by 5:46 a.m. when the sky outside our window began to smear from black to gray. But at 6:02 a.m., the front door creaked open. I didn't move. Just listened. Her footsteps were slow, uncertain, like she was walking through smoke. She stopped in the hallway. I knew she saw the shoes, my shoes, neatly placed by the couch. She knew I hadn't slept in our bed. "Marlon," she said. "That's me. Marlon. Like the fish. Except less graceful and more disposable." She tried again. "Marlon, are you up?" Still, I said nothing. When I finally turned toward her, she was pale. Hair messy. Makeup half wiped away like a memory trying to vanish. Her voice cracked when she opened her mouth again. But this time, she didn't say anything. She just fell to the floor, hands shaking, mouth opening and closing like she was gasping for air. I watched her crumble, like she was the one who'd been betrayed. I should have felt power, vindication, something, anything. But all I felt was cold, and it was only the beginning. She sat on the floor for a long time. Didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat, cross-legged like a child, her back pressed against the hallway wall, staring at the floor like it was telling her something she didn't want to hear. Her fingers were digging into her own thighs, nails white from pressure. I sat on the couch, watching her from the corner of my eye like I was afraid full eye contact would make it real. I still hadn't said a word. I think she expected me to lash out. Maybe even hoped I would. Slam something, throw questions, curse her out so she could feel like the victim. But I gave her nothing. Just silence. Just the sound of her own breath, ragged and uneven, filling the room like a fog she couldn't clear. She finally looked at me. Not the look you give someone you love. The look you give the person who just caught you red-handed and somehow didn't punch you in the face. "I messed up," she whispered. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? "Yeah, no kidding. Oh, thanks for clearing that up, Madison." She started crying then. Not the loud, movie-type sobbing. The kind where you can barely breathe, where the air feels like knives and your own guilt is too heavy to carry. Her mascara had already melted off sometime during the night, so now her face was just blank and puffy, like she'd been drowning in her own decisions. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said, her voice cracking halfway through. There it was. That far. The phrase every man dreads because it never means nothing happened. It means something did. And it was enough to make her collapse on the floor of our hallway like she was the one who got betrayed. I still hadn't spoken. I don't know why. Maybe I was afraid that if I opened my mouth, I'd say something I couldn't take back. Or maybe I knew that nothing I said could hurt her more than the fact that I didn't say anything at all. She stood up slowly like every joint in her body was resisting. She didn't walk toward me. No, she walked to the kitchen. I heard the cabinet open, the clink of a glass. She poured water and sipped it like someone on the verge of throwing up. "Chase kissed me," she blurted. That name. Of course it was Chase. The same man who probably takes mirror selfies in hotel gyms and refers to women as chicks. I don't know what I hated more, that it happened, or that it was with someone like him. He kissed me, and I didn't stop him. I should have, but I didn't. I told him I was married. He said, "I don't see your husband here." I laughed. She laughed. She laughed. She told me that with shame pouring from every inch of her skin, like confession might clean her soul if she got the phrasing just right. But all I could hear was that sentence. I laughed, and all I could see was that wine stain on her blouse, the one I knew didn't come from her own glass. I finally looked at her, full on, and she cracked. Not physically, not yet, but her whole presence shifted, like the version of herself she had been playing finally gave up and walked out the back door. What was left was raw, messy, human, but not the woman I remembered. Not the one I gave my vows to in front of 50 people and one crying minister. "I don't love him," she said. "I don't even know why I did it." But she did. She knew exactly why. She just wasn't ready to admit it. And I wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. She followed me. After spilling her guilt across the kitchen counter like shattered glass and water rings, she lingered. I walked past her. I didn't want to be in that space anymore. Not with the smell of her perfume clinging to the air like some third-party witness to what I wasn't supposed to see. I went to the guest room. She never liked that room, said it felt cold, impersonal, like a hotel. That was the point. I shut the door, but didn't lock it. I wanted to see what she would do with that decision. 3 minutes later, it creaked open. She stood there holding her phone like it was radioactive. Her hands were shaking, not from nerves, from what was inside that phone. "You don't grip your phone like that unless it contains something that could end you." "I can show you," she said. I didn't delete anything. I didn't ask her to show me. I didn't say anything at all. But she sat on the edge of the bed anyway and unlocked the screen. I think she wanted to be caught. I think she needed it. Needed me to see just how far from innocent she'd wandered. She opened the text thread with him. His contact name wasn't hidden. It didn't say dental office or Claire. It said Chase Whiteheart. That emoji hit harder than anything else. The texts weren't full-blown inappropriate. No naked pictures or dirty talk. That almost made it worse. They were casual, safe, emotional, the kind of soft, daily intimacy that eats marriages from the inside out. "How's your morning going? I saw that article you mentioned. Wish you were at this meeting. No one gets my jokes like you. She doesn't deserve you stuck in that dull house. She doesn't deserve you." There it was. That one phrase hit me like a brick to the chest, because you don't say that to a married person unless you believe it, unless someone has made you feel like their prison cell. I didn't even know who said it. Maybe him, maybe her. I couldn't remember. My brain blurred the sender because the meaning was the same. She had emotionally moved out long before she ever leaned in for that rooftop kiss. Then it got worse. There were photos. Not inappropriate, not scandalous. Just quiet little snapshots she'd taken at work. Her at the espresso machine. Her in the mirror fixing her earring. Her smiling into the lens like she was 24 again and free of all this. And she hadn't sent those photos to me in years. I thought I could control it. She whispered, as if her own words might erase the evidence. I thought it was harmless. Just something to distract me. Distraction. Like I was noise in the background. A faucet dripping. An old wallpaper she kept meaning to replace, but never got around to it. I was her distraction once, back when love was new. Now I was the thing she needed distracting from. Her phone buzzed again in her hand. It was him. "Chase, you okay? You didn't text. I'm worried." She turned the screen toward me like a confessional offering. "Do you want me to reply?" she asked. "Do you want me to end it right now?" I stared at her for a long moment before finally speaking the first words I had said in almost 12 hours. "No," I said. "I want you to leave it on read." She blinked. "Just that." "Yes," I said. "Because the worst punishment for him is not knowing what's coming." She paused, then did exactly what I said. Open the message. Read it. Lock the screen. And for the first time in this entire nightmare, she looked genuinely afraid. But it wasn't over. Because what she didn't know, what I hadn't told her, was that her secret messages weren't the only ones I'd seen that week. There was another thread. Another man. And she had no idea. She thought that was the end of it. That leaving Chase's message unread would somehow reverse time. That the unraveling thread of our life could be tucked back in neatly, smoothed over with trembling hands and desperate glances. But some fabric, once torn, can never be mended, especially when it was already worn thin. I sat on the edge of the guest bed while she stood in the doorway, arms folded across her chest, not defensively, more like she was trying to keep something from spilling out of her. I could hear her breathing from across the room. shaky, uneven, like someone trying to hold back a scream in a library. "What now?" she finally asked. Her voice was small, raw. "What do we do now?" I tilted my head slightly and gave her a look I didn't even know I was capable of. Not anger, not disappointment. Something quieter, more final, like a man staring at a door that had already closed before he realized he was on the wrong side of it. "You should go rest," I said. "You look exhausted." That rattled her more than if I had yelled. She expected fury. She expected a man who would lose it, break things, scream questions, demand answers that deep down he already knew. But I was calm, unnaturally calm, and that terrified her. She didn't move. "Marlon," she said, my name like a question, like a plea, like she was trying to remind me I was still her husband. "Don't do this. Please don't shut down on me. If we're going to fix this." "We're not," I said. Just that. 2 words. She blinked, and her mouth opened, but I stood before she could respond. Walked past her slowly, quietly, down the hallway, into our bedroom. No, her bedroom now, and grabbed the shoebox from the back of the closet. The one she hadn't noticed was missing for the past 3 days. I'd found it earlier that week. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the extra charger she always steals from my drawer and pretends is hers. Instead, I found the box. Not hidden, not locked, just stupidly, carelessly shoved behind a pile of unused scarves and a travel curling iron she never packs anymore. Inside were cards, letters, printed out emails, love notes, dozens, but none from Chase. No, these were from someone else entirely. A name I didn't recognize at first, Elliot. No heart emojis, no playful texts, just words, heavy ones, poetic ones, the kind that didn't belong to a fling, they belonged to a history. "I think about you when I make coffee. When I fold laundry. I know you belong to him, but I don't think that means what it used to. If things were different, would you still choose me? When he kisses you, does it feel like obligation or muscle memory?" And then, the last one, folded more than once, the paper worn from being handled over and over. "You were never his to begin with. You've just been pretending for so long. You forgot how good it feels to not pretend." I had read those words 2 nights before the rooftop party, and I said nothing. I did nothing, because I wanted to see what she'd do when she thought the walls were still holding. I wanted to see just how far she'd fall before realizing she was never holding on in the first place. So I handed her the box. She didn't take it at first. She just stared at it like I was holding a weapon. "Who's Elliot?" I asked. Her lips parted, but no sound came. That silence was louder than any confession. She tried to speak, then stopped. I raised the lid. "Do you want to tell me how long this has been going on?" I asked softly. "Or should I start reading them out loud?" Her legs gave out again. She slid to the floor, just like that morning. But this time, she didn't cry. This time, she just stared at the wall, eyes wide and empty, like her whole life had just stood up and walked away. I stood over her and set the box down gently beside her knees. "I only found out about Chase by accident," I said. "But Elliot? You gave him your soul. Chase was a firecracker. Elliot was an earthquake." And then I left the room. Because sometimes, the most brutal thing you can do to a person who lies is finally believe them. The thing about unraveling is that it doesn't happen all at once. People imagine betrayal as a bomb, loud, instant, irreversible. But it's quieter than that. It's peeling wallpaper. A roof leak you pretend isn't there until the mold spreads. And by the time you smell it, the damage has already eaten through everything. After I left her sitting on the bedroom floor, still staring at that shoebox like it had swallowed her future, I went downstairs. I didn't want to be in the same house, but I wasn't ready to leave. I wasn't running, not anymore. I was observing, gathering, because the more she unraveled, the more I realized something wasn't right. Something more than what she'd confessed. Chase and Elliot felt like symptoms, not the disease. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. Just a reflex, really. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Distraction, maybe. Familiarity. I checked my email, cleared the spam folder, scrolled through useless newsletters I never unsubscribed from. And then I saw it. A bank notification. Not my main account, one of our joint ones we rarely used anymore. The kind we kept open out of habit and laziness. The subject line was simple. "Transfer confirmed, for $1,000 sent to D. Harrow." I froze. We hadn't used that account in months. Maybe longer. And we certainly weren't sending money to anyone named D. Harrow. I clicked it. It was real. For $1,000, transferred 3 days ago. The reference line read, "Private arrangement." I don't remember breathing for the next few seconds. I just stared at the screen, rereading that one phrase over and over like it would suddenly start making sense. But it didn't. It made less sense the more I looked at it. I opened the banking app on my phone and checked the full statement. That's when I saw it wasn't the only transfer. There had been 2 others in the past 2 months. Smaller amounts. Unremarkable on their own. But this time, for $1,000? And I hadn't authorized any of it. I scrolled further and saw the login timestamps. She'd been in the account. Last week. 2 weeks before that. 6 times total in the last 90 days. I looked up from the screen like someone had just whispered in my ear. The house felt colder. Heavier. Like it was pressing down on me. I heard her footsteps upstairs. Slow. Uneven. But I didn't go to her. Instead, I searched the name, D. Harrow. Nothing useful. Common name. A couple LinkedIn profiles. A criminal record hit from Texas, but it didn't match the timeline or location. I started wondering if it was a real name at all. Or a code. Or worse, something I didn't want to understand yet. I printed the statement. Just the line with the $4,000. Highlighted it. Folded it in half. Walked upstairs. She was sitting on the edge of the bed now, knees tucked up, face pale. She didn't look up when I walked in. I set the folded paper beside her. "You forgot to delete this," I said. She didn't open it. "Who's D. Harrow?" I asked calmly. Too calmly. She swallowed. Once. Twice. Then finally looked up at me with those glassy, hollow eyes I was starting to despise. And said nothing. That silence. It told me everything. Because that's when I knew. Chase wasn't the first, and Elliot wasn't the last. There was someone else. Someone who didn't want her heart, or her laughter, or her midweek selfies. Someone who wanted something far more dangerous. And she had paid them for it. I didn't say anything else after she stayed silent. I left the paper on the bed like it might burn a hole through the blanket and scorch her into confession. But she didn't touch it. Didn't even glance at it. Just stared at me like I had become something unrecognizable. And maybe I had. Maybe I wasn't the husband who would walk away anymore. Maybe I had grown tired of playing quiet. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of her. Not even because of the cheating. Because now I had a name I couldn't explain. A payment I didn't authorize. A pattern that didn't fit the profile of infidelity. Cheating was one thing. Disgusting, sure. Soul-rotting. But understandable in its own twisted, emotional way. This wasn't that. This was something else. I waited until 3:14 a.m. before getting out of bed. She had moved to the guest room without being asked. I hadn't even looked at her when she stood from our bed earlier that evening and walked away barefoot. The sound of her soles brushing the hardwood was the only proof she still existed in this house. I sat at my desk downstairs and began digging. Deeper. The email tied to the bank transaction was one I didn't recognize. A string of letters and numbers that looked like it had been generated for a burner account. I traced it. Routed through a VPN. Nothing useful. But there was something odd. The transfer didn't originate from our usual IP address. It had come from her work. She'd logged into our joint bank account from the office. And this time, she hadn't used her phone. She'd used her desktop. That was new. So I called in a favor. An old friend of mine, Julian, works cybersecurity for a private firm. We hadn't spoken in years, but I still had his number buried in my contacts under J firewalls from when he helped me recover a wiped external drive back in 2018. I didn't give him the full story, just told him I was tracking a strange financial flag on a joint account. I forwarded the info, the IP trail, the metadata from the transfer, and the timestamp. He replied 3 hours later with a single sentence that made my stomach go cold. That email address is linked to a private consulting file. Name registered, Declan Harrow. Declan. The D in D Harrow. Julian included the file link, which was password protected. I told him I wasn't trying to break into anything illegal, just trying to understand what my wife had gotten us involved in. He said the file wasn't criminal, not directly. But it was strange. Declan Harrow, private domestic consultant. Discretion services. Personal management. Relationship resolution. It sounded like a PI. Or worse. I stared at the screen, rereading those vague phrases. Personal management? Relationship resolution? What does that even mean? I copied the number tied to the file. I didn't call it. I wanted to hear it from her. So I printed everything again. email traces, the file header, the contact name, the bank receipts, and laid them out on the kitchen counter like court evidence. When she came downstairs the next morning, her eyes were swollen from whatever version of sleep she had attempted. She didn't look at me. She went straight for the kettle. That's when I spoke. Tell me who Declan Harrow is. She didn't flinch. Didn't pretend not to know the name this time. She turned off the kettle before it boiled and leaned against the sink. And after a long, dreadful pause, she finally answered. I hired him, she said. 2 months ago. For what? I asked, even though I wasn't sure I wanted the truth. She looked up, and for the first time since the rooftop party, she didn't look ashamed. She looked scared. To help me get out, she said. To disappear. Without you knowing. That's when the floor dropped out from under me. She hadn't just been cheating. She had been planning to vanish. And she was paying someone trained, to help her do it. There are moments in your life when everything around you keeps moving. The refrigerator hums, the neighbor's dog barks, the birds chirp outside your window, and yet your body doesn't feel real. That's what it felt like when she told me she had hired someone to help her disappear. I sat there, on the edge of the kitchen chair, blinking slowly like a computer processing a corrupted file. I wanted to ask so many things, and yet none of them made it to my lips. I felt like a stranger in my own house. And worse, like I had never truly known the woman standing in front of me. You were going to leave? I said flatly. Without telling me. She nodded. Slowly. Not defensive, not angry, not even crying. Just nodding. Like someone owning a truth she had rehearsed silently for too long. I was scared, she said. Of me? No, she replied quickly. Not of you. Never of you. Then of what? Her eyes dropped to the floor, and her voice lowered. Of becoming like you. That one sliced through me. Not because it was cruel, because it was honest. She sat down across from me. For a moment, the world felt still again. Like maybe we were just two people having coffee on a tired Sunday morning, rather than two strangers untangling the end of their lives. I didn't want a divorce, she said. I didn't want the lawyers, the courtroom, the ugly parts. I didn't want to fight you for the house or the couch or the photo albums no one ever looks at. I didn't want you to suffer through my leaving, because I didn't think you'd survive it. So your solution was to hire a guy to help you vanish and leave me wondering if you'd been kidnapped or murdered? My voice cracked at the edge. You thought that would be easier on me? No, she whispered. I thought if you didn't know where I went, you'd stop waiting. Those words landed like a slow explosion. The kind you don't hear right away because your brain is too busy trying to protect itself. Then she slid something across the table. A folder. I stared at it. My name wasn't on it. Neither was hers. It was labeled Phase 3, Relocation and Legal Nullification. I opened it with numb fingers. Inside were documents. Drafted forms. Identity restructuring. Plans to liquidate accounts. A timeline, with dates. Her departure was scheduled for 2 weeks from now. Chase was a mistake, she said. Elliot was emotional weakness. But this, she tapped the folder, this was the plan. The real one. I looked through the paperwork. There was even a medical letter, drafted in vague language, about stress-related psychogenic amnesia. A lie, clearly. But a lie carefully prepared, one meant to explain her future absence. To give police and family something to chase instead of the truth. She wasn't planning to leave me. She was planning to cease existing. I felt my stomach knot into something violent and heavy. How long? I asked. How long have you been planning this? Since March, she admitted. But I'd been thinking about it since the December trip. The one with your sister's engagement party. When you told me you thought you'd finally found your purpose. That memory struck like a match. I remembered telling her I wanted to quit my dead-end job and start teaching. I wanted to feel useful again. I had never seen her smile so softly, nod so sincerely. I thought she was proud of me. She wasn't. She had already begun building her escape. You're not a bad person, Marlon, she said, and for some reason, that hurt even more than if she had called me a monster. You're just slow to move, slow to change. You always wait for life to happen to you. And I got tired of waiting for you to fight for anything. Even me. I clenched my fists under the table. I was fighting, I said. You just never looked in my direction to see it. She didn't respond. She just sat there, exhausted by her own honesty, like telling me this was more of a burden than living the lie had ever been. So, I said, why tell me now? And that's when she dropped the last thread. Because Declan called me last night, she whispered. He said someone had flagged our account. that someone else was watching, that the plan was compromised. I leaned forward, pulse steady, eyes locked on hers. Because I flagged it, I said. I had it traced. Her expression shifted. You? Yes, I said. And I spoke to someone else too. Someone Declan worked with before. What? You think you were the only one making plans? For the first time, her face went pale. Because now she realized something she hadn't before. She was no longer the only one who had been preparing to disappear. The silence between us wasn't painful anymore. It wasn't even tense. It was just quiet. Still. The kind of quiet that comes when the storm is finally over, and all that's left is debris and sky. She looked at me like she had just seen a version of me that never existed before. One that had been hiding under the weight of years, quietly watching, quietly forgiving, quietly bleeding. You knew, she said, more to herself than to me. I nodded once. Not because I wanted to gloat, but because it was time to end the pretending. I didn't know everything, I said. But I knew something was broken. And I think I stayed so still for so long because I was hoping you'd be the one to admit it first. Tears came again. But these weren't manipulative. They weren't self-serving. They were soft and slow, like something finally giving way after too much pressure. You should hate me, she whispered. I did, I replied. Briefly, but it passed. She looked confused. I spent years being invisible to you, I continued. I tried everything. Quiet love, big gestures, compromise, silence. But the truth is, I didn't lose you. You walked away long before I noticed you were gone. And I kept standing in the same spot, hoping you'd turn around. There was nothing left to argue. No fire to stoke. Just two people finally seeing each other, not as they hoped the other would be, but as they truly were. You don't have to leave like this, I said gently. You don't have to disappear. You can just go. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. I didn't expect you to be this calm. I didn't expect to feel this free, I said. And it was true. For the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by her moods, her disinterest, her distance. I wasn't analyzing every silence or begging for scraps of affection. I wasn't frozen in place hoping she'd reach back. I was letting go. 2 days later, she moved out. No theatrics. No lawyers. No bags of rage. Just quiet, adult honesty. She took the things that were hers. I kept the house. She canceled the remaining payments to Declan. I asked Julian to close the trace. We didn't speak much. But a week after she left, she sent me one message. You're going to be okay, aren't you? And for the first time in a long, long time. I didn't hesitate to reply. I already am. It's been 3 months now. I started teaching. Nights at a local community center. English for adults who missed their chance the first time around. I've made new friends. I sleep better. I laugh without wondering if it's the wrong time. I still think about her sometimes. Not with hate, just with distance. Like something I once carried too long without realizing I could put it down. Some people will read this and think I'm weak for staying so long. Maybe I was. But sometimes healing doesn't come from burning things to the ground. Sometimes it comes from setting down the match, opening the door, and saying, you're free. And so am I. And that's how it ended. Not with revenge. Not with destruction. Just with me, finally choosing me. And it was enough.